It is impossible to say definitively who is the best Formula One driver of all time, but I can say, objectively, it is dishonest to exclude Lewis Hamilton from that conversation. Even before he got into a go-kart, Lewis Hamilton was an incredibly talented and unusually serious child RC racer. By the time he was 13, he was already noticed and signed by McLaren. At 22, he debuted in Formula One with the best rookie season of all time, coming within a single point of winning the championship. Hamilton's story was a heart-warmer, and it was easy to agree that he deserved a championship. I would say most people wanted to see him win at least one, and the very next year, the fans got what they wanted. He won the Drivers' Championship. But then Lewis didn't win another title from 2009 all the way to 2013. And back then, it was still very easy to be pulling for him because he was so talented, but McLaren just wasn't giving him what he needed to win another title. Many people were shocked by his move to Mercedes for 2013, and even felt like he betrayed McLaren, who helped him through his junior career and gave him a world-class car in his rookie season. But the joke was on them, because McLaren hasn't won a single title since then, and Lewis has won 6 more drivers and 7 more constructors championships with Mercedes. It was during this time that I found it harder and harder not just to cheer for him, but to even like him. Cheering for an underdog is easy, and so is cheering for the promising new guy. But for many people, myself included, it is very difficult to cheer for the obvious favorite to win. The Mercedes power unit was virtually unbeatable at the start of the turbo hybrid era, but Rosberg was giving Hammy a run for his money. So while he wasn't getting any external competition, he was having to fight tooth and nail against his teammate. In fact, one might even argue that he fought dirty. But that's why he's the winningest driver of all time. He does what it takes to win. For those of us outside England, it got even harder to stay in Hamilton's corner after Rosberg finally won a championship and decided to leave Formula One to become the Monaco-based YouTuber he is now. Lewis was left without competition and became the obvious favorite to win for years on end. Bottas was hired on a series of one-year contracts to support Hamilton, but if we're being honest, Valtteri was never able to truly take the fight to Lewis. So he fell in line, and together the two of them became the winningest driver pairing of all time.
Yeah, I need that extra point, guys.
Copy, we're on it. Valtteri, it's James. Please abort the fastest lap attempt for the end of the lap.
I know I'm not alone in feeling this way, but I was fully sick of Mercedes and Hamilton by the time 2021 rolled around and Max finally had a car that could challenge for the title. 2021 was an incredibly exciting season to watch. Young upstart versus entrenched veteran. The man who held all the records versus the man who would eventually break them. There are so many ways to describe the title fight between Max and Lewis, but it's important to remember that at the time, there was a ton of public appetite for someone to win who wasn't Lewis. I didn't even particularly like Max at the time, but like a lot of people, I wanted anyone but Lewis to win. And during my Christmas party the night before Abu Dhabi 2021, I remember blasting Supermax at 2 a.m. and being totally pumped to watch the race the next morning. I'm not going to get into what happened in Abu Dhabi 2021. This video isn't about that. But I do think it's safe to say that no one was truly satisfied with the outcome of that race. I certainly wasn't. I wanted Max to win, but not like this. Hamilton didn't win another race for a long time after this. 2022 was especially demoralizing for Hamilton, as Mercedes went from the favorite to win to kind of a joke. But it wasn't just Lewis's ego that took a bruising. His car was literally hurting him physically. The porpoising in this season was no joke, but the way that Mercedes handled it kind of was. 2022 was the first time in Hamilton's entire career that he went a whole season without at least one race win. Even worse, his teammate, George Russell, managed to score a victory in the same car. So it can't even be said that his car was incapable of winning a race, because it did. This was when I started to feel bad for Lewis. It wasn't like he was any less talented, but his spirit felt broken. 2023 was almost as bad. Mercedes was still floundering and ended up abandoning their zero pod concept, and Lewis went winless once again. But at least this time, so did his teammate, so you really can blame it on the car. And you know Lewis hadn't lost his talent because he still managed to give Checo a run for second place, despite the RB19 being the most dominant Formula One car of all time. It was heartbreaking to watch the former champion struggle with the team that he once unironically told the press doesn't make mistakes.
They can make a mistake building that car.
My team don't make mistakes.
At this point in time, I had a ton of sympathy for the 7-time world champion. But I don't like whining. Getting down on yourself is not a good look. And while I might have felt bad for him, I certainly wasn't cheering for him. I was too stoked on Alonso's successes that came after his move to Aston Martin. You see, I was really bummed about Seb leaving the grid in a slump. But Fernando's resurgence had me fully on board the Alonso hype train. I wasn't even thinking about Hamilton. But then, right before the 2024 season started, F1 needed to bury the news about how they were rejecting Andretti. So it leaked that Hamilton had signed a historic deal to go to Ferrari. Honestly, given how badly Mercedes fumbled the first 2 years of the new ground effects era, I wasn't surprised that Lewis wanted to jump ship, and Ferrari had shown some flashes of brilliance over the past couple years. So this didn't bother me at all. In fact, I was hoping it would bring the light back into his eyes and give me a reason to cheer for him again. But as it turns out, I wouldn't have to wait for Hammy to don the red race suit for him to come alive again. Seemingly out of nowhere, nearly halfway through 2024, Mercedes got their shit together, and Hamilton finally won his first race since Abu Dhabi 2021. At Silverstone, his home race. He burst into tears, and so did I. Not only did he win, but he took the victory on merit. This wasn't a fluke, right place at the right time situation like Ocon in Hungary. Hamilton genuinely earned and deserved this win. The car was good enough, he was on his game, and luckily, he didn't suffer the same mechanical failure his teammate did. The light came back into his eyes, the flame was reignited, and I was so happy for him. Just a few races later, at Spa, the Merc was once again on top. Russell and Hamilton took an easy 1-2, but then, after the race, George's car got weighed and subsequently body shamed for being 1.5 kilograms underweight. This gives Hamilton his second win in just 3 races. And while this one may not have been entirely on merit, he was looking like a favorite to win for quite some time there. So he can still be proud of this success. If you've noticed at this point, I've shared who I've been cheering for over the past few years. Vettel, Alonso, and now I'm building a case for Hamilton. Have you caught the common thread? If you haven't, I can explain it by telling you about my own background. I am a 35-year-old former athlete. I love seeing an old guy experience resurgent success later in his career. I especially love seeing a former world champion who hasn't won a ship in years get put into a race-winning car. And just once, I want to see an old guy add one more championship to his count. I want to see someone who everyone called washed come back and show the world he's still got it. I wish Schumi had been able to win with Mercedes. And I wish Vettel had been able to win with Aston Martin. And I want the same for Alonso. But so far, they've all come up short. But I don't feel the same way about Lewis. As soon as the Mercedes was capable of winning races on merit, he did it. If Ferrari gives him a good car, and I think there's a reasonable chance they do, I think Lewis is going to be the first old guy to win another championship after a drought. And as someone whose glory days in his chosen sport are firmly behind him, I want to see someone older than me do it and prove it can be done. His confidence is back, his mentality is improving, the talent never went away, and the competitive flame is burning brightly. I am ready to cheer for Lewis again. I want to see a 40-year-old stamp his name on the World Championship for the first time in nearly 60 years. I'm ready to be happy for Hamilton when he gets his 8th title, in a way that I wasn't in 2021. I would not have felt anything for him if he had done it back then. But now that he's gone through the trials of the last 3 years, I think he deserves to have that shot one more time to show everyone that he can do it. And frankly, I think he can. And if you're tired of hearing me talk about old guys, why don't you watch this video where I talk about the McLaren drivers, young and younger. P.S. Everything that I said about Hamilton goes doubly for Alonso, and I know that if he got a championship-capable car, he could do it, but for whatever reason, nobody wants to give him one.